Hello, I'm Ronnie Eldridge. Welcome to Eldridge and Company. In so many neighborhoods and across the city, there's an all-hands call for organizations large and small to help those in need. This puts Michael Stoller in the vortex of a city in need. He's the executive director of the Human Services Council of New York, and he's my guest today. And he's also an old friend. Welcome, Michael.
Hi, Ronnie. Thank you. Thank you for having me and having me in the vortex.
You know, as the economy gets worse and governments shrink, then all of these organizations are the organizations that are supposed to prop up families, provide services, advice, help, and everything else. But they're also getting totally attacked by the lack of funds or threatened by it. So what happens?
What happens? Well, what happens to the clients is the people we serve. Human Services Council is an organization of all the not-for-profit social service agencies in the city. So we serve the kids and the elderly, the immigrants, the homeless, everybody with need.
There are 130, what? 100?
Agencies?
Yeah.
We have about 160 members. But we also have all the federations, all the coalitions, so we represent thousands of agencies which serve millions of people.
They go from the Actors Fund right through the alphabet, right?
Right to whatever Z is at the end. Right,
right, like the Catholic Charities, the
Catholic
Protestant.
Charities, UJA, all the big federations, Black Equity
right.
Alliance, the Protestant
and then
Federation.
small organizations.
The Queensborough Council on Social Welfare, the Lower East Side Services Union. We also have Children's Aid, which is big. The whole gamut of big, small, Black, white, Catholic, Jewish, Protestant, Hispanic, Asian, everybody. Everything belongs to us. And what's good about that is we get this kind of bird's eye view of what's going on in the sector. But right now, it's kind of like a vulture's eye view because it's dying. Here's an example. There are some of our agencies we know are going to go belly up completely. And there's some people who are saying, well, if they're really small, what difference does it make? They should be absorbed by a big one. But the small ones are the neighborhood
ones. Who really get the people.
They know the neighbors. They know the people. They know when Mrs. So-and-so doesn't show up to call Mrs. Other so-and-so because she'll take care of her. You can't get any closer, but they have no infrastructure. And so even during good times, those people are taking it on the neck. And in bad times, I mean...
Well, how do they get funding in the good times?
Government contracts, state and city, foundations, private donations, and then fundraisers. Everything's down by at least a third. We know that there's one agency that lost $30 million in its endowment. I can tell you when the Children's Aid Society was getting money from the Pickhour Foundation, which you may recall, that was one of Bernie Madoff's. And thanks to him, that foundation disappeared. And this foundation helped Children's Aid work on preventing adolescent pregnancy and childhood obesity.
And they can't do it anymore.
No, they're not sure how screwed they're going to be.
Yeah.
Pickhour was a piece of it. But Pickhour is completely gone. That jet, Madoff,
Just gone.
Yeah, he killed him. He killed him. But even without that particular scandal,
just the investments in the market.
Investments are down. It's about, I think it's like the best information we have, which is a survey we did with Baruch, is 36% down in foundations, and in that neighborhood with endowments, private giving, and government contracts. So it's a perfect storm. Because we know the government never pays enough. Remember, you were in government. The government never pays enough to do the service.
Right.
But you had a bake sale.
And they don't pay it in a timely manner.
Oh, my God. Then you have to borrow the money. You have to pay for the cost of money. But it's part of doing business, nonprofit.
You get used to that.
Yeah. But now, there's no more. Those sources have dried up. They're not there. So the only thing it can give then is layoffs, which are what's happening. So it's less service, and down the road, it's just each thing feeds on each other. It's
Which area do you think we're going to feel it the most? I mean, for older people,
that's
young
a good
kids,
question.
it's very hard to figure
Across
out.
the board, I think where people will see it is homelessness. Remember the 70s?
Yeah, right.
That's what people are going to see.
I remember the 60s.
The 60s, well, the 60s too, yeah.
70s, basically.
Yeah, when the city was going bankrupt.
Right.
I think people will see it in homelessness, which is going way up.
Right.
And
that's due, what, to the lack of rent assistance?
People getting laid off, they're losing their jobs.
And losing their jobs.
Well, here's an example.
Working people.
Working people. People who are on the edge. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. If there's, we were up in Albany yesterday lobbying for, there's a homeless prevention program. And let me not fake my numbers. It costs... Right.
Homeless prevention is when you give an
rent,
amount of money to make the rent.
Or other kind of assistance.
Right.
So if this program serves 7,000 families, to stop them from being evicted costs $600 a family. Or if they go into a shelter, it's $36,000. It's even if you're not morally moved.
Right. It's so crazy.
It's crazy. So the government is saying, okay, you're right. This is the right thing to do. But even if we save $4 tomorrow, we don't have the dollar today. But we say you do have the dollar today. Can I show my?
Sure.
Where do I show it? Or do you want to?
I don't know. Well, we'll show it later.
Okay.
But tell us what it is.
All right, what this is called Sharing the Solution. The Human Services Council is part of the One New York Coalition, the Responsible Wealth Coalition. There's a few groups that are getting together to say we should raise taxes on the wealthy. And whether you define wealthy as 200,000 or 250 or 500, which is the rumor now for the state, the incremental increase in their taxes could bring in.
Little.
I know, and they said that people are going to move. That's nonsense.
Right.
People are not going to move. Even Ed McMahon from Empire State, the conservative think tank, said they're not moving. People don't move because
So that's the thing they always use.
Bogus. Didn't happen in 2003. We raised the taxes, and meanwhile, right now the rate. If you make 40 grand, you make 40 million. Your rate is 6.85%. It's the same rate.
Wait, say that again.
I
see. Your tax
rate
at the same rate.
6.8.
Right.
So it should
this
be.
This is a state tax.
State tax. So it should be a higher rate.
Right.
And we had 80 rich people sign this letter. We presented it yesterday at a press conference in Albany saying, tax me. It was interesting because one of the reporters there said, it was such a great question for these times. Why would they want to do this? What's in it for them?
What?
What's in it for them? We said was good karma. People are doing the right thing. People, remember, we're both older. Remember, Jack Kennedy, ask not what your country.
Yeah.
People, and Obama's proving that. I think people do want to do.
And not only that, but if you let your community around you deteriorate, you've got people living on the street and spending a lot of money there, and that's cutting other expenses other places. It's the quality of life for everyone.
Absolutely.
It's the essence of the meaning of community.
Absolutely.
What affects somebody in one corner, it's going to affect you on another corner.
Psychologically, or actually literally, your property values will go down too.
Right.
As the stores get boarded up,
right.
Crime goes up.
So you act as a lobbying and advocate for all these organizations.
That's right. We try to find issues that cut across. These days it's easy. And we go to Albany, we go to City Hall. We'd love to have a federal presence, but we're too small to lobby.
And how do you get funded?
Well, we're going to be in trouble too. We get foundations, so we're scared. We get a few private donations. We get membership dues.
Yeah.
That's a big source of our funding. And we get a little bit of city money. We were getting some state money for disaster preparedness, but they cut it last year. The city money is scaring us because if we don't get that city council money, we're going to lay somebody off.
We talk about the government taking care of people, but the government can't do all of that work. That's why we need these kind of agencies, large and small.
But one thing we have to make a distinction.
And actually, they're quasi-governmental.
Yeah, one of my board members, Jim Purcell of CAFCA, the Council on Family and Child Care Agencies, says once the government takes responsibility for the kid, whether preventing harm or taking them away, it's the government's kid. It's legally and morally the responsibility of the government to care for this child, period. How they do it through our agencies, that's fine. But just because they do it through nonprofits, and there are thousands of nonprofits, doesn't mean it's not their job.
Right, and we know that also because they should have some oversight on the quality that the organizations do. So it becomes it is an extension of government.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Every once in a while, you do find organizations that are voluntary organizations that provide services that the government ordinarily wouldn't think of doing.
I guess that's true. Not that often, yeah.
Right.
But trying to think one offhand.
So you think that these cuts are generally out of the Human Resources Agency and the Agency for Child Development, and the Homeless Agency? Where else do we come out of? It's basically...
The Bond for the Aging,
right.
Administration for Children's Services, these are on the city level.
Right. On the
state level, it's OTDA, Office of Temporary and Disability Assistance, Office of Children and Family Services. It's across the board. We're hoping, some of the stimulus money, is going to go down. So the state's going to take a chunk, and the city's going to take a chunk, and then we're going to see what's left for us. It's not going to save these services. It's going to help a little bit. But here's the other thing,
The
Ronnie.
stimulus money comes to you how?
Contracts from
the city.
It's always contracts, yeah. We can't get grants. It's always contracts, which is fine, but it depends on how quickly they get processed.
Right.
Blah, blah, blah.
Right. The other thing with the Agency for Children's Services and other are the youth programs that come in, which is another thing like the shelters. If you don't take care of some of these kids, they're going to land up in juvenile detention or in jail. And then what happens? It's the same thing, right? $50,000 as opposed to
millions. Best example, maybe not best, but when I have it here, Children's Aid, again, they do services for substance abusing parents whose kids are put in foster care. So that if they can get the parents straight, the kid can go home and get services. That's being cut. So what happens? The kid stays in foster care. Studies have shown that foster care, the next step, you graduate to a shelter or jail.
When you're 18 years old, you're out.
See ya.
Sometimes you're on your own.
21. Right. It's, here's a token,
right.
Go.
Right.
So if we can stop now, if we can get this parent straight, besides that this parent's life will be in better shape and better for the community, get the kid home. Right. So it's a better shot for the kid, or if you don't care about kids, it's a better shot for the community. You'll save money. No matter how you cut it, if you cut it with your heart or with your head, you win.
You've got it. I am involved in domestic violence projects and that issue. And of course, as the economy worsens and stress becomes greater, you have an increase in violence in the families. Mm-hmm. And those are programs also that are getting cut.
Yeah,
and it's totally unproductive because it's also dangerous.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we know that's happening. The DV has gone up.
Yeah.
Because it's this, the frustrations and the and the tensions, and also the ego. Someone who's providing for his family. We're not that removed from that somewhat sexist paradigm. Can't provide, and is so frustrated and takes it out on the easiest target, which is sitting right next to him.
So let's pretend the economy was fine.
Okay.
The budgets were fine.
Oh, great. I'm out of a job.
No, you're not out of a job. But you're not out of a job
I'm not
because
out of a job.
We are still very important with these community,
Yes,
these organizations, social service organizations. What would be the largest problems that we face?
Wow.
Would it have to do with families and children?
I think it's different. I think the how I would like to answer that question is, how do you solve poverty?
Right.
If we had enough money to do all the care work we do, not saying this pejoratively, the Band-Aid work we do, if we can go beneath it, kind of what the mayor attempted with the Commission on Economic Opportunity, to really solve the root cause of poverty, which is the structural racism, the structural inequities in the system, some of the things that were exposed with Katrina, some things were exposed with the AIG bonuses and all this stuff. If we had the safety net really whole, so that people were cared for, then we could put that aside and say, okay, how do we get rid of the safety net because we don't need it anymore? That would be a great thing to work on.
And that gets traceable to everything. Early childhood education.
Yeah.
Which would
prenatal health.
Prenatal health, right. So you have healthy babies. You have good education, preschool.
Nutrition. Start from scratch. You think about
your schools would be great.
Yeah, and even what does a general white middle class person have? Even one that's not so gifted, they have these basics.
Right.
If we can give everybody those basics,
then we enrich and support the family, and they are off on their own.
The whole society goes up.
There is work on defining the poverty level.
Yeah, the mayor started that, which is good.
Right, and then there's another family, Merble
Regan's group.
Right.
They have the index.
What it really costs.
Yeah, the poverty index. Yeah.
Which I remember when I interviewed her about 2 or 3 years ago. It was good. For a family of 3, I think, $40,000 or $42,000 was the minimum. What do we pay now?
We have where is this thing? Right now, the federal poverty level for a family of 3. 3. I think it is.
Yeah.
Is like, here it is, 200% of the federal poverty level, 200% is $32,000 for a year for a family of 3 in New York City. I know, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And that's why the mayor, and we support this, is trying to get the federal poverty level New York City based. This may be based in God knows where, Topeka perhaps, but you can't support one individual $32,000 a year in New York City, much less a family of 3. How can you buy sneakers? For the kid, it's absurd and it's insulting.
Right. So
it's like remember when they were doing ketchup as a vegetable? Who was it? Was that Reagan?
Yes, that's right. Ketchup as a vegetable. Right. Do your organization? I guess now they don't have time to really deal with these more basic questions
of poverty. Not right this second. I mean, interestingly, we've been talking at Human Services Council about moving towards that. So we stay doing what we do well, which is the advocacy and the stuff for the providers. And since that was going so well, now we've done a little anti-racism work. We've done a little voter registration work. We've dipped our toe in.
It's interesting.
Yeah, it's been great. We work with the People's Institute to do these fabulous trainings on institutional racism. 2/3 of our board has taken it. And we really wanted to have a core.
What do we mean by institutional racism?
It's not personal prejudice. It's not like stupid jokes with stupid words. It's about built-in structural racism that don't allow people of color to get past that ceiling.
So give me an example.
Examples. It used to be the presidency. Now
Right.
it's not. It's more like how they say there's no color should not be a face for affirmative action in Harvard, but the fact that you've been married to someone who was married to someone who had children or child legacy, tell me that's not affirmative action.
Right. Or unions that take in sons of.
Sons of. There's affirmative action.
Right. And we see that increasingly in politics.
Oh, yeah, there's dynasties are building. But so there's an
It's
example.
not funny. I shouldn't laugh. It's really terrible. But it's
So we want to do that kind of stuff, but we had some foundations interested in funding it, but the foundations have been crushed.
But your organizations are very mixed and interracial.
Oh, of course.
And how and do you see the same kind of institutional racism in the hierarchies in the organizations?
It's a very interesting question. One of the things that, if we got this funded, one of the things we wanted to do, what we still want to do if we get it funded, is send in a SWAT team. There are these people who know how to do this. They go to our agencies, mine, anybody's, and say, and kind of look at your policies, your procedures, how things are done, who's hired, to see if there is unconscious institutional racism. And hopefully you're open enough, I'd be open enough to then go, this policy has this effect. And I would go, oh, who knew?
Right.
Because we're not talking about people who are overtly racist.
Right.
Some people who don't, don't know yet.
Or don't pay attention.
Or don't focus on
Aren't
it.
conscious of it, really.
One way or another. So that, I'm sure there is. Plus, we're trying to nurture people of color that are coming up in the ranks, because a lot of these agencies were formed, a long time ago by white folks.
It's very,
I'm the first white guy to have this job at my office.
Oh, that's good. But let's explain. The budgets of the state and the city reflect the conditions on Wall Street.
Especially the city.
The city has always over-depended, right? Been over-dependent on the revenues that they get from Wall Street, from the, what do we call them, fire agencies?
Finance, insurance, real estate, and real estate.
Right, and real estate, fire. So we've always been dependent on that, and people have worried about that.
Yes.
But that's the reason they worry about it. This is what happens. The revenues that we take in are so much less than the expenses that we put out. What is going to happen, do you think? Are you in active negotiations? Are you involved in conversations in the city yet?
Yes. They're going to rev up a little more once the state goes to bed. The rumors are the state's going to be on time or pretty close.
And what's the state going to do? It's not doing very much, is it?
Not for us.
Who's it doing for? It's not doing for...
I don't know. I mean, again, the rumors are, these are rumors we hear in the papers. We were up there yesterday. We were up there every week. That there may be a tax on half millionaires, on 500,000, which would be great.
Right.
And hopefully that money will not just go to close their gap, but will go to human services. There's some cuts that they're proposing. We've talked to some people up there, and everybody we spoke with has been very sympathetic. The argument has been, where do we find the dollars now? And that's when we bring up things like the personal income tax or Rockefeller drug law. If they repealed that stupid law,
they'd get people out of jail.
We don't belong in jail or in prison, and we get hundreds of millions of dollars.
Do you is there a state organization parallel to yours?
There is a couple of state organizations that are more, specific to a certain subsector. But there's a fellow named Doug Sauer who runs one upstate, community.
And we always hear about the tension between upstate and downstate, but it seems to be a social service agency.
Oh, no, we're working together.
Yeah.
In fact, because I live
Counties,
upstate, we've been talking to folks up there about how we can work with them, because it also doesn't look then it's just, oh, here comes those city people again. Because there's poverty. People think upstate New York is like this idyllic Eden. There's a lot of poverty upstate New York.
Now, as we cut these services, we also cut the personnel.
Of course.
And we don't give salary raises, and we just we add to the problem rather than solving the problem.
More unemployment, more people on food
And
stamps.
now, with facing the increased cost of transportation with the MTA and the failure to solve that kind of those problems, we are really in for much harder times than we are even expecting now, it seems to
Oh yeah,
be.
it's going to get worse. Our agencies, including some of the bigger ones, have already done layoffs, some major layoffs, and more are coming. I think about 42% have done layoffs now, and about 67% think times are getting worse in a survey that Baruch did with us. So even if it's half right, there's going to be that many more people on the street needing the services.
And social service agencies, social service work is a large part of the workforce in New York City, isn't it?
Oh yeah, you bet.
What do you estimate it to be?
I don't know the numbers, but it's 25% of the city budget goes to human services. So that's one way of doing it. We know
City budget is now up to 63 billion or something like that.
Yeah, I think we're
it was 57 or 54 when I was counting.
Yeah, it's 25% of the budget is of the New York City budget goes to us, goes to to human services. Just checking the notes. I don't know what's going to happen. If they raise the taxes, if they end Rockefeller drug, there are things that can be done. Even if they do it all, it's not going to be good times because there's going to be more people on the street. More people going to
Who are the most effective public officials? Is this putting you on the spot? Who are your advocates? Who do you look to for leadership?
You know, what's interesting is everyone we've spoken to at both the city and the state level, I could say now, and I say this in a completely nonpartisan way, since we work with both sides of the aisle, their hearts are in the right place.
Well, that's a distinguished characteristic of public officials.
Not always.
Maybe I should say Democratic public elected officials.
We work with some very helpful Republicans as well. Let me put it this way. We work very closely with the mayor, kidding aside. We work with Linda Gibbs, who's the deputy mayor for Health and Human Services. The mayor's been very helpful. He gave a COLA, I've been on this job 6 years, must be 4 or 5 years ago, for thousands of workers.
COLA is a
cost of living adjustment, sorry. And we did a press conference, the mayor and myself.
For your people as well, for people who are under contract with the city?
Right, the workers, the ones who actually work with the kids or the elderly or the immigrants or the homeless or the ill.
On contract basis,
Correct.
being paid by a contract from the city.
Right, so they got to jump. We're working with them again on some very creative stuff. Linda is chairing with us a public-private partnership to really handle some of the stuff that's been in the way about contracting. I can go into detail, but it's a little arcane. But you remember for your contract
Well,
days.
that's your field.
I know, that's what I do. But basically, they've been really in our court.
But legislatively, when you got people who are going to work on the budget.
In the state?
Who do you talk to in the state?
We talk to the DOB, the governor's division of the budget.
So from the governor's point of view.
And we talk to the chairs of the committees that are concerned us.
Who are they?
Are you putting me on the spot now? That's why I have a staff.
All right. Okay. So you don't go to individual members also?
Sometimes we do.
Yeah.
It depends if they have an interest in the particular subject, if they're a power player
but
that we need.
But the committee chairs aren't that, we don't know what they do as far as the formulation of the budget, don't we? Because it's still not transparent, as they say.
Yesterday we went to the Speaker's office.
Yeah.
We spoke with his staff.
Yeah.
We saw some of Lynn Farrell's staff. The week before we saw, I think it was gubernatorial staff more.
And then you go to the Senate with the majority leader staff.
We're trying to arrange a meeting with Malcolm and his
Do we
people.
know how the budget is being put together? No.
I don't. According to the Times, it's more secret than it's ever been.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing?
No.
In this day and age? It is.
Unfortunately.
It is.
When I say amazing, I mean I'm not surprised.
I'm constantly surprised. Why is that? I don't know how I've maintained this degree of naivety or something. It's incredible.
It's really...
The city has a much more visible budget process.
Yeah. It's mandated by law. They have hearings all the time. They had hearings yesterday. The homeless commissioner and the ACS commissioner were on the hot seat, and they sit there, they answer the questions. It's much more open. The state is very closed.
Right. You're an attorney.
Yes. Is that an accusation?
What brought you to public service?
The same thing
I'm always interested.
The same thing that brought me to being a lawyer. I don't know how far back you want to go. I remember when I was a little kid, growing up in the projects in northern Manhattan. My dad collected money for NAACP. And also, we were walking the street once, and a friend of his who seemed 100 feet tall, but of course that's because I was, 4 inches tall, pinned a Stevenson button on me.
Ah.
It was my first political button.
You're not that old.
Oh, yes, I am. Thank you. But it was a Stevenson button, which I still have, white with blue letters, and I kind of caught that, and I was taught, I think a lot of it's the Jewish tradition, the prophetic tradition of you do the right thing. And then the 60s happened, And, you know, I got arrested for protesting like everybody else, and then
you went to law school?
I went to law school, went to legal aid, did juvenile rights division in the Bronx, defending kids accused of being delinquents or, you know, PINs, persons in need of supervision, abused and neglected kids, and then found my way to the government. And
you've never regretted it?
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. Do you think that people nowadays, young people nowadays, are being drawn to it again?
Yes. I think the 60s are coming back, in not the culture war sense, but in the sense of, I think that's what a lot of what President Obama brought, is that sense of, that Kennedy-esque sense of hope, and you matter. You can make a difference. I think part of the downside of the 8 years prior was not just the obvious, but everybody was depressed and thought, I can't do anything. Right. What's the point?
Now, electing Obama, now they feel they can do anything.
Yeah.
Do your organizations also, with their own constituencies, they organize support?
Yes, at their communities and
right.
Of course.
So it is an organization that goes from the council down to all the different organizations, down right into the neighborhoods or the services.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and they go up with you when you go to Albany sometimes?
Yeah, sometimes clients come. Actually, clients are the best.
Yeah.
Because, you know.
Oh, absolutely. There's no way of.
You can't deny the human. We had two clients from Project Renewal, great agency, came up last week.
What's it called?
Project Renewal. There were two people who had substance abuse problems, had gotten themselves together, were now on the path towards self-sufficiency, and you listen to these stories, and it's like, unless you're completely cold-hearted, you go, oh my God, there but for the grace of God go I, you know, and they were beautiful, unbelievable, and, you know. But yes, the staffs come up also, and that's also good, that people actually do the work. And then the directors come up, like we do, and we just lobby. Right. But when you have the clients coming up, Ronnie, man, sometimes we actually make sure we go and visit our agencies so we get back in touch with what we're doing.
Yeah. You have a website?
Yes, www.humanservicescouncil.org.
And people will be able to see this too?
We're going to put it up.
And there are other things on that website that will allow you to write to the governor and the assembly and the state senate.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much, Michael. It was very nice to have you.
Nice to see you.
And I hope everybody does something about this.
Amen. You'll melt to God's ears.
Bye.
Thanks.
If there are any people you'd like to hear and topics you'd like us to explore, please let me know. You can write to me at CUNY TV, 365 Fifth Avenue, New York, New York, 10016, or you can go to the website at cuny.tv and click on Contact Us. I look forward to hearing from you.